matters, or social workers matter. I keep getting confused with my own title. It's all about hearing from practitioners, sector leaders, and educators. We learn about their work, their journeys, and what drives them to do what they do. And today I am in conversation with Mr. Andrez Harriott, who is the CEO and founder of the Liminality Group. I got that right, didn't I?
You did
Limin
indeed.
Liminality Group. Um,
Liminality, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the aim of this group is principally to prevent and reduce offending among children and young adults between the ages of 10 to 21. Welcome, Andre. How are you?
I am blessed, thank you. And it's Andre. Andre.
Andre.
Andre,
What did I
yes.
say? Andre.
Andre, yeah. It's Andre. But
I
yeah, I'm
probably I,
blessed
I
and
probably got some
well.
cousin called Andre. That's why.
That's all right.
Andre. Yeah, yeah.
I'm blessed and well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you. We had a few struggles because both very, very busy and finally we managed to make this happen. So I'm really pleased.
Good.
Um so Andre, uh, tell us a bit about you,
Mhm.
how your career journey started and what led you to set up this organization. But before we even do that, tell us what liminality means.
Oh, fantastic. So I came across the word liminal during my undergrad. I was studying my undergrad in criminology and sociology,
Okay.
and I began really focusing on long-term prison sentences, so life sentences for adults and children.
Hmm.
And I was doing sorry, doing some research and came across the word liminal. And it really described the space in between where you're coming from and where you're going to, a space of
Hmm.
ambiguity. And it spoke about this liminal phase that prisoners experience where they go into custody at a young age. Say you go in the age of 16 and you may do 20 years in custody. And then when you come out psychologically, there's been some stagnation
Hmm.
where chronologically you have aged, but psychologically and emotionally there's been stagnation at the age of 16.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they
Yeah.
were saying that custody was the liminal space really highlighted this kind of this period of freezing and ambiguity where you need
Hmm.
to morph into something else. And I'm a man of faith, and God just said to me, you need to name your organization the Liminality Group. And
Mm.
so for us as an organization, we work with children, young adults, and organizations. They come into my system in one way. They enter a liminal phase where we change, transform, help them to morph into something different, and they
Hmm.
come out on the back end in a different way. So that's why we call it the Liminality Group. It's a space
Liminality.
where you come in and you can change and transform into something, um, God's willing, more positive, or God's willing,
Hmm.
able to deliver services to your service users in a better way after coming into our liminal space. So that's an
Wow,
explanation.
that's really powerful, man.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So tell us then a bit about your own career journey, because I mean, you just mentioned there that you've completed your undergrad in criminology, and so what happened along the way in
So
terms of
the journey begins in 2004. I come back from traveling the world and sorry, being
yeah,
heavily
well,
involved.
let's not let's not skate over that. You're a professional musician as well, so that's what that's connected to.
Yeah,
But
no, no. I never underplay it. I'm a member of the British R&B band Damage,
yes,
and I have
okay.
been for 30 years, and still are now. We just finished touring with Boys to Men, just finished touring across the UK
Wow,
ourselves,
wow.
and yeah, kind of really in our 30th anniversary, which is incredible. But after touring with Damage from a very young age, I came back to the area that I was raised in. Not born in. I'm originally from Northwest London, Stonebridge, but I was raised in Brockley, Lewisham, Southeast
Okay,
London.
okay. Traitor. Yeah, go on.
But yeah, moved around London and various parts of the UK and came back to Lewisham after touring the world and began to dedicate my life to working with children and young adults involved in offending. I just wanted to show them that the world was bigger and than their local area. And I had no idea at that point about the systemic, structural, and institutional challenges or the
Hmm.
disparities experienced by some groups or the neurodevelopmental needs of some children, the mental health needs of some children. I just thought it was all about them choosing to be involved in criminality.
Wow, wow.
I began to work for a third sector organization. And then I was seconded into the local authority after they had seen some of the work that I was doing with this third sector organization. That led me to spend 10 years in a youth offending team, which are now known as Youth Justice
Oh,
Services.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I
okay.
moved through different roles, specializing in resettlement, post custody, then moving into a senior role as a gangs and serious youth violence lead,
Hmm.
working with the local authority and the Metropolitan Police to rehouse children and young adults, or to provide almost like a witness protection scheme for some children and young adults involved in serious and complex offending.
Hmm.
I then left that organization, set up the Liminality group. Primary task was to change the trajectory of children most at risk of being involved in offending,
But
or those
let me ask you, what did you feel was missing? What in terms of
when I
yeah,
left the local authority.
yeah, because you know you must have seen that there's something else we can be doing here. But what was that?
Well, I'll go on to that.
Okay,
So
cool.
when I left the local authority and I set up the organization, our primary task was to change the trajectory of children most at risk of becoming involved and those currently in the system.
Hmm.
And we began to do that by delivering services on behalf of the NHS in the secure estate, so young offender institutions. I created an integrated framework of care, 4 pathways of care, a bespoke offending behavior program, trauma informed, psychologically informed, and culturally informed, transition services for children doing life sentences. So we will follow them all the way through their sentence, whether it's 8, 9, 10, or 25 years. CPD training for staff so they can be more culturally aware of how to work with all children, but specifically children from minoritized communities. And then finally, access to education and employment when they came home. So I was,
Hmm.
so should we pick up from here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was there explaining the integrated framework of care that we had built to deliver services to 2,500 children and young adults in custody over a 10-year period.
Hmm.
I then went off to the Tavistock and spent 2 years doing my master's in organizational consultancy and leadership, using systemic and psychodynamic approaches to really understand what goes on in organizations,
Hmm.
the both the conscious and unconscious dynamics that can impede task performance in organizations. And to go back to your earlier point, what did I notice in the local
Hmm.
authority that led me to set up my own? So one, it was the bureaucracy that prevented us getting outcomes for some of the children that I think we could have supported in a different way. Seeing services which were not culturally sensitive to the needs of all children.
Yeah.
Seeing the organizational boundaries around different parts of the system, which sometimes struggle to communicate. And then that's again where children and families fall through some of these gaps because of
Hmm.
the,
Hmm.
the really strict boundaries led by legislative frameworks, which
Yes, yes, all things
are
that keep coming up. Yeah, yeah.
coming up, right?
Hmm.
And again, I said to you earlier, I'm a man of faith. So, my God was just saying to me, I want you to move in a different way. I want you to do something different. And also, I want you to specialize in working with children who are highly complex, highly vulnerable, very high risk. And I want you to do that work. So, as an organization, we've worked with over 2,500 kids in custody, probably
Hmm.
trained about 4,000 professionals across social services, mental health services, the police, local authorities, youth justice services, as well as doing a lot of preventative work with children who are most at risk of coming into the system. And
Wow.
we do that by partnering with schools across London and the UK. And then we provide residential breaks for children. And yeah, so it's a whole system approach,
Yeah,
really.
kind of really holistic
Yeah, it's a
approach.
holistic whole system approach to working with
Yeah,
the professionals and then the children and young
yeah,
adults in the system. So that's
yeah.
yeah, that's how we got to this point.
Wow, wow. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of wind back a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously, I mean, you refer to we because obviously you can't do this on your own. So give us a sense of how your organization is structured. Who are your team? What are their specialisms?
That's
What do you all sort of bring to the table in terms of the service?
That is such a great question. So my team is very small. I have a team of advisors. I have a team of workers who work for me as project workers.
Hmm.
But in terms of full-time staff, we had three full-time staff. And there's been changes in the organization. So I pull project workers in and I pull associates in to work with me on particular
Particular
projects.
projects. Okay, cool.
But the organization itself, it's myself, my advisors, my legal team, my accountants, etc. And then in 2025, we will be scaling to take on more staff.
Are you a registered charity or a social enterprise?
So we are registered as a company limited by guarantee, and then
Okay,
we have a private commercial arm as well.
okay.
And actually, this year, just to go back, we did set up the charitable status this year, but that's really going to hold our residentials. We get a lot of donations from businesses and
Hmm.
you know people are doing well, and they will now be able to give that directly to the charity and
Oh,
support
great.
residential breaks for children who live in urbanized environments and get to come out of London with our organization.
Lovely. No, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been going for?
Liminality Group was set up in 2012. Yeah,
Wow.
2012. Yeah. So
Wow.
it's been a while. It's been, yeah, best part of what's that, 12 years, 14
Yeah.
years?
I'm not good at math, but it's been a minute, definitely.
Hmm.
Wow. Um, and I mean, you mentioned obviously, part of our cross paths is the Tavistock.
Hmm.
Um, and you mentioned that you did a course there, a program there, masters there. And
Hmm.
I'm interested to find out, how has that impacted on the work that you do? I know that in the Tabby we are very big on unconscious processes and so on, and
Yes.
you specifically apply that to your understanding of organizations. But how do you feel it's really helped you in terms of your understanding of people and organizations, etc.?
Mhm. All right. So I think I'll go back and just pay credit to and acknowledge my clinical supervisor, Dr. Garfield Harmon, um, who
Hmm.
I've been working with for the best part of 6 years, 6, 7 years. Um, and I was going to go and do my master's actually in criminology just to follow the path of my
Yeah,
undergrad.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know, Dr. Garfield is, I think, works closely with the Tavistock and also has private practice.
yeah.
And he said to me, "Look, I want you to go and I want you to consider doing this course. I can see where your organization is going, and I think there are some skills and some teaching that will be beneficial for you to help protect you emotionally and psychologically in some
Hmm.
spaces that you're walking into."
Hmm. Hmm.
So I've always, always pay credit to him for being able to guide me to the Tavistock. What the course did for me, apart from absolutely breaking me apart and then rebuilding me, as most courses that look at the psychology of organizations and humans, whether you're studying to be a clinical psychologist, etc., etc., as an individual, you have to be broken apart and then rebuilt to ensure that you don't cause harm to your patients, service
Hmm.
users. What
Hmm.
the course did for me is it introduced me to conscious and unconscious dynamics, things I'd been aware of but didn't have the language for.
Yeah.
It introduced me to theoretical frameworks to really consider the organization systemically and structurally. And it helped me to navigate things which take place beneath the surface in human interactions and
Yes.
relationships happening every day between all of us,
Yes.
whether you work in Google or whether you and your family run a bakery, whether you're the chief exec of a local authority or a leader in the NHS, whether you're the CEO of British Airways, or whether you're just in your own family, that the organization and the family should be seen systemically.
Yeah.
And what the Tavistock enabled me to do was to take an objective and subjective understanding to step outside of the boundary of life and looking with a different lens and say, that's what could be going on. To
Hmm.
be able to create hypothesis and to be able to test those out, and to be able to think of interventions and solutions to some of the problems that impede task performance. And we
Hmm.
don't just use that organizationally as an organizational consultant. I use that with the children and young adults that we work with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, I think what I'm saying is it gave me a different lens to view life and society.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely hear you, and I think I similarly felt the same way about sort of studying there as well, and obviously still teaching there. But so that's really interesting, and I think uh, it's fascinating because you kind of you don't just take things on face value. You
Yeah.
have this very reflective stance, which can be so useful in trying to understand groups and teams and so on. So yeah, good for you.
Yes. Yes. But
Um,
it was not easy. All right. It wasn't
no, no,
easy.
yeah,
All
no,
right?
still isn't really.
It
But but
wasn't
you take from it what is valuable and useful,
oh my God, it
and
was
apply.
life changing, life changing. And I've provided, it's my dog in the background. I provided and provide clinical supervision to people who are studying at the Tavistock. And I always say to people, before you rush in to go there and study, I want you to really understand one, what you're walking into, but
Hmm.
what this commitment will be. It's not just an academic commitment, it's an emotional, psychological commitment that potentially, if not managed right, can impact your relationships in your family, relationships with your partner, your business relationships, because you are going to change. You're going to go through a state of evolution. You're going to be evolving, and sometimes the people around you are not moving in that same way.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
can't manage some of that stuff along with the academic studies, it can have a devastating impact on you. So I always say be mindful what you're walking into, but if you can survive it, and I use survive with a capital S, you will come out the back end and be so much stronger.
Hmm. Hmm. I think one of my mentees, I kind of shared your details with, because I
Mm,
think there are particular issues, particularly as a black man, um, that can be equally as fascinating and interesting. So it's useful
mhm.
to talk. It's good to talk.
Yeah,
Good to
absolutely.
share. All right. So back to the organization. I mean, I live in Hillingdon, and
Lovely.
I'm aware that you have done some collaboration work with some of our local agencies, one
Yes.
being Brilliant Parents,
Yes.
who
Me and her team. Yeah.
Neve and her team. And I
Yeah.
recently had some discussions with her,
Good.
and she shared something of a sort of collaboration that you guys were involved with. So tell us a bit about that, because it's interesting that both agencies worked in tandem but played different roles in the
Yeah.
project.
So I originally came into Hillingdon. Meath had contacted me. She's a friend of one of my parents, my dad, and she had contacted me to hear more about what I was doing, but then also she recognized the specialism. I think Meath's organization, Brilliant Parents, work with parents, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're there to support parents. But she recognized that there was some value in us partnering together so I could focus on the children and the young adults. The first piece of work that we delivered was part of the violence reduction unit. I think
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
secured some funding to work with children at risk of or currently involved in serious youth violence, or involved in exploitative relationships. So we did some initial work there, providing what we call our psychologically informed interventions. That's helping children understand about adverse childhood experiences,
Hmm.
the development of their pro-offending identity, the risks that are out there. But we take a lot of our information from 10, 11 years of working in custody with the most violent, complex, serious children. We bring that into the community and say, look, this is actually what the reality is if you pursue this lifestyle and these
Hmm.
choices.
Hmm.
So we partnered with me to do that, and then I think we did that for about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months. They were just purchasing, our services to deliver bespoke interventions. More recently, this year, we did some phenomenal work. A child had been murdered in the local area, and the children surrounding the child, so the friends, were extremely
Of
traumatized, and
course.
the parents of the child as well, obviously, were extremely traumatized. And Brilliant Parents had come in to provide some containment for that,
Hmm.
and then also
Hmm.
to um, minimize retaliations from the friends.
Yes.
Sometimes
Yes. Yes.
trauma can then be enacted in further violence. So we worked with probably about 30 or 40 children who are close to the child that lost his life, and helped to provide really clear messages about
Hmm.
um, grief. We took them through the 5 stages of grief, some of the things
Okay.
children, they've been completely unaware of, and help them to identify where they were in that cycle. We help them to understand trauma. We help them to understand and articulate their feelings and their emotions, and also help to provide a space for the mother to be able to express her emotions in front of those children as well. So
Mm.
there's a huge piece of work,
Yeah,
phenomenally
man.
really well received by the children and young adults themselves. And I think there'll be more work to do. And again, that was part of the violence reduction unit funding that Brilliant Parents has received. So that's how we
Hmm.
kind of collaborated.
Yeah, and I mean, from what you're saying, obviously you sort of engaged in other sort of collaborations and partnerships with other folk.
We
Um,
do.
I suppose one of the things I'm curious about, because this is heavy stuff,
Mm,
particularly what you've just described there.
mm,
Um, I mean, what do you believe? I mean, how do you get the messages across in a way that's received? Well, positively is the wrong word, but in a way that's received, and also, have you a sense of what the impact of your work is
mm.
on these young people?
Yeah, so that's great. Two questions. So in terms of impact, let's go there first, and then let's come back to um so yeah, sorry, you asked me about the impact and what was the other part of that question? My mind went to impact straight away.
We'll talk about impact because I've lost the thread because
Yeah. No, it's
but
fine. You're saying
oh,
a
no,
sense.
how's the message was
How
received?
the message
Yeah,
received.
that's
Thank
the
you. Right. So impact. So over the past in custody, over the past 11 or 12 years, we have been able to be a bridging service between traditional mental health models and the children and young adults coming through the system. So increasing their participation with clinical psychologists, art therapists, drama therapists, really breaking down barriers to them engaging with the therapeutic support that's
Mm-hmm.
needed to
Mm-hmm.
transform their behavior. We cannot just focus on the offense itself. We have to
Yeah.
focus on the drivers of the offense and also long term how they regulate their emotions in the community or custody if they're doing a lengthy stretch. And just how they understand themselves again systemically within their family, within their community, etc. So we've been able to really help hundreds and hundreds of children engage with mental health services. We were able to evidence a 60% reduction in reoffending. That was between 2015 and 2018. We took that data from 2 years post leaving custody. 60% of the children who had worked with our organization had
Yeah.
not gone on to reoffend, which was incredible. But I think more so in terms of the system, we have been able to change the narrative as to how some children and families are held in mind. And that's through all the services collaborating and starting to see the children for who they are. They are actually children, regardless of the offence committed,
Yeah.
regardless of who they're connected to, geographically where they live. We've been able to introduce concepts such as adultification
Yeah.
on a wider level, but make it meaningful, not just a buzz term.
Yeah.
We've been able to think about intergenerational trauma and how that impacts in the lives of some children and families. Um, so in terms of outcomes and impact, those are the larger kind of headline things I can think of. And then I can just think about hundreds of children who are now young adults, mid-20s, late 20s, have children in full-time employment, were either at risk of being involved or who have come out of custody and are living crime-free lives. And we've got many, many, many stories of those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of how we get these messages across,
Yeah,
it,
because that's
it
the other thing. It's
yes. So how do you
you
get
know
the
the,
message?
the engagement, I think, is probably what
Yeah.
I'm really curious about. How do you
So,
engage these young
so I
people?
think it's a relational approach that we use. And again, great buzz terms, but what does it actually mean? I'm as an organization, I'm always interested in the timeline of life. So the historical context is always important to help us understand what's happening in the now. In terms of our engagement, when you have worked with thousands of children who have been involved in very serious offending, you have all those stories located in you or
Hmm.
located in your organization. And, I never get to the point where I say I can work with any child or any young adult. But when people say they are hard to reach, I always say they're not hard to reach. You just don't know where you're looking or you're not looking in the right place.
Hmm.
So the messages that we bring in terms of initial engagement using that relational approach is this is what I understand from a system perspective. These are the disparities that drive some children and families into our systems at a higher rate than anybody else.
Hmm.
These are the types of offences that can have a devastating impact on your life chances moving forward. This is what the law says. This is what happens emotionally and psychologically when you're involved in specific type of offending. These are what exploitative relationships look like really early. And I'm not talking about the menial, somebody buying you chicken and chips and buying you trainers. We all know that, that's basic. I'm talking about long-term, not even grooming, but long-term engagement from organized criminal networks who take children at a very, very young age and over a 8 to 10 year period begin to get them to the level that they want them in. It's training. It's just like the army, mini soldiers, etc. And I think once we start bringing in our understanding of the criminal justice system, our sociological context, thinking how we work psychodynamically, systemically in organizations, you bring all that together and you have these children and families and organizations saying, I've not heard it put to me in this way before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we secure engagement. So it's a relational approach, but it's
Yep.
also thinking historically what has gone on to create who you are now,
Yeah.
all
So they
the
get a real sense of the story. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the lived experience of
Yeah.
them plus our lived experiences, and then also how you migrate that with academia, how you integrate that with just knowledge of self and knowledge of systems, um, and how you help them to navigate the unknown. And what we find is children and young adults just saying nobody's ever told me these things in this way. I'm aware of these things, Andre, but nobody said it in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for organizations as well. When we consult to organizations, they say, Andre, we know some of this stuff, but it's the way that you're helping us to experience it. It's the experiential approach that is helping us to sit within it, feel it, and think about how we can make changes. So yeah, I think
Oh,
that's a response
okay.
to both those
Yeah,
questions.
I just, I'm always curious about how we engage,
Yeah,
um, because quite frankly, lots of the sort of traditional methods don't
yeah,
don't work.
they
Um,
know. And
no,
you're
so
always learning, right? You're always
absolutely,
learning
and what
how to
more importantly, be open to learning at least.
be
But
open to learning. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
And
so
I just want to say, I remember that, one of the things I picked up at the Tavistock in our studies was the term, the consultative stance, where you
hmm
stand outside of yourself and look at yourself in the moment.
hmm
And that was such a revelation. I'd always done it, but not had the language for it. But to see
hmm
yourself as an organizational consultant or to see yourself working with children in custody, I've worked with hundreds of boys specifically who have committed murder. And to see myself working with them outside of myself, taking that third position, it's
hmm
phenomenal. And then it teaches you this is what works, this is what doesn't work, do more of that, do less of this, and then you start to build your own script, your own narrative as to how you.
you're sort of your own approach, which
Yeah,
is
your
what
own
I'm hearing
approach.
as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Um, have you sort of taken on board this whole contextual safeguarding piece?
Absolutely.
Because it's
Yeah.
sounding very much like that.
Yes. So
Um,
I originally came across contextual safeguarding through Professor Carleen Furman,
hmm
and I'd met her many, many, many years ago when I was in the youth offending team.
hmm
And I remember she was doing a lot of work at the time with girls in the community, and the messages that we were getting, again, this is stuff we know, but it takes somebody to create the
Yeah,
language.
and put the
She
package
was saying,
together. Yeah.
we're thinking about how we safeguard children in the home. We're thinking about how we safeguard children in the school. But there is a context which is outside of the traditional spaces that we safeguard children in.
Yeah.
Safeguarding is at the bus stop. Safeguarding is outside McDonald's. Safeguarding is, at the
Outside the
airport,
chicken shop. Yeah.
outside the chicken shop.
Yeah.
And there are some children from minoritized communities and wider who we are not contextually thinking about how we protect them outside of the traditional spaces.
hmm
And
hmm
that's where, I started to see the language, and I started to see how it was being taken on by local authorities and statutory services. And it adds significant value to the lens that we use, which is safeguarding is everybody's responsibility, but it doesn't just happen in the traditional spaces. It happens
Yes.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and for a lot of the children I work with, unfortunately, who have come from minoritized backgrounds, they have not been protected. Their rights have not been upheld as children. They've not been safeguarded. They've not been seen as worthy of being safeguarded. which speaks to the adultification piece as well,
Hmm.
where they're
Hmm.
seen as, being more culpable, being more responsible for their own actions, forgetting that, the adolescent mind, the child mind is still developing. These children
Yeah,
don't
life
actually,
stages, man. Yeah.
they don't know what they're doing at certain points, right? Uh, you know, the boys and girls that I've worked with who have plunged knives into people's bodies repeatedly or who have shot people. Um, it's as horrific as it sounds. When we go back through it and we take them into the deep end of the pool, so we can go into the conscious and unconscious feelings which surrounded the offense, you see the innocence of the child and
Hmm.
them just not understanding what was going to happen in the moment. They meant to cause harm, but to murder. Many of the children I work with didn't mean to murder. They meant to cause harm, but not to murder.
I mean, unfortunately, because we have a society where, some of this villainizing and
Yeah,
is driven by media and, the political context as well.
yeah,
It creates monsters
yeah.
in the eyes of society, and it kind of
I,
fits in with, somebody's got to take the blame, someone's got to take the hit. But as you say, at the center of it are these
yeah.
children who have the innocence of children.
Well,
Um,
it's again, some children
mhm.
and families are asked to hold things on behalf of society.
Yeah,
They're
that's the
asked to
word.
hold, they're asked to hold the pain, they're asked to hold the danger, the risk, the poverty, the social disorganization, that plagues their communities. They're asked to hold that so the rest of us can live our lives
Hmm.
a little bit more carefree.
Hmm.
And I'm always interested in why, you know, I'm not interested in why. I'm interested in how we help them understand what's being located in them, so they can navigate these worlds and these
Hmm.
spaces in a different way. This
Hmm.
doesn't take away, their the responsibility that they
Yeah,
must, right? It doesn't take that away from the
yeah.
children that have committed really serious offenses or children who are at risk of doing things. I know there are some children who are very risky and young adults who are very risky, but we also have to hold some responsibility that we have raised them in a society
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that helps to create spaces where this behavior
Yeah.
can happen.
As
So everyone,
culpable as culpable as they are, we are too as a society.
we are
So,
too, as a
yeah,
society, 100%, we
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah. Um, you're reminding me so much of some of the work I did back in the day.
Mm.
One of the pieces that I was engaged in, I was managing a youth inclusion support project. I don't know if you're aware of them, YISPs.
Yes, we remember YIFs
You
well,
know,
yeah.
you know. So I managed one. I managed a team in Hillingdon, and I
Yes,
remember during that period,
yeah,
we had a lot of resources, right? And this was all about preventative work.
yes. Are we
And
talking early 2000s?
yeah,
Early 2000s,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
A lot of money around at that
yeah,
time.
it was a good time. It was a good
Yes,
time.
yes.
I mean, one of the things that used to frustrate me though was all the sort of reporting back we had to do to the Youth Justice Board,
Mm,
because of course during that period the government wanted to see, in my view, instant transformation,
hmm,
which those of us who are in the work know that it doesn't work like that.
hmm.
Um, but what I guess I'm curious about is, is your organization subject to um, some of these kind of very bureaucratically driven reporting back on the impact and the transformation of the work that you do, um, or have you been spared that?
No, I think it's impossible to not be accountable. I think you're talking about accountability.
Mhm.
It's impossible to not be accountable to a funder or to a client, whether that's, statutory services,
Mm.
third sector charities that may be partnering with you, or even private businesses that may want to support the organization. So we are accountable, definitely.
Okay.
I do, as a CEO, try to minimize engaging in things that are going to be administratively heavy and prevent us from doing the real
Good for
work.
you. Good for you.
And I try to. It's not always
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
but giving somebody 2 years of funding where they spend 8 months setting a project up, then they get maybe 4 or 5 months of delivery, and then they have to spend the back end evidence what they're
Yeah.
evidencing what they've done. You have such a limited time to do the work, do the real work. So I try to stay clear of those things. For
I
me, and
really, I really want our listeners to
yeah,
get that, because that's
yeah.
something we complain about all the time, but it's a reality. All
Yes,
that sort of back end stuff and very limited time to do the work. I have a
yeah,
sister who works in, she does a lot of work in Hackney,
yeah,
and they're going through the same thing at the moment. Very short period of time to deliver the program, and then
yeah,
a ream of
yes.
bureaucracy
But
around it.
but there's a reason for that, you know.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
know,
I say
I know.
historical context is always important.
Mm,
We came from a place historically where people were not evidencing what they were doing and taking large sums of money,
yes,
not being accountable, and
yeah.
then at the end, not being able to prove where this money had been spent. So we
Yes,
had
I
to have,
also came through the 80s as well, where that was.
I'm not
I
saying
won't even go.
anything,
I won't go there. But
I'm not saying anything because
probably my generation's fault.
I
But
was
anyway, go on.
I was a child. I was a child at that time. And listen, that's across all services, right?
Mm, mm,
Um, but the point is now we have to have an evidence base to what we're doing and we have to show
mm.
outcomes, but we have to get a balance. And
Yes,
sometimes it's better to outsource this work. It's better to have somebody who can write your bids for you, somebody who can come in and do external research,
yes.
to really help you evidence what you're doing so you can spend more time on delivery.
Hmm.
Uh, Going back to my point, I try and stay, away. If somebody says, "Oh, we've got £5,000, we want you to work with 50 children over a 12-month period," my response, respectfully, is there are people that open bottles of wine for £5,000, right? And we want to work with children and transform their lives and their
And
behaviors for.
deliver a quality service and rah de rah. Mm.
So we don't respect these children's lives if somebody's sitting down having a 5 grand bottle of wine and the same amount of money is being put into 50 children. Let's not do that. Let's
Hmm.
work with smaller numbers. Let's be more intensive, more long term, and then let's use the outcomes of that to go and get the bigger pot to do it on.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Andre, so tell us a bit about, I'm going to call you TLG, um, future vision, direction.
Yeah.
What's in the future, or
So
do you dare think about that?
I know we must think about the future, but I'm cautious to talk about that because not everybody is for you. Not everybody, not everything that you should discuss in the
Sure,
open.
sure.
Not everybody is for your vision, and
Well,
words are
give me
powerful.
the
The
broad
broad, the
frame.
broad picture is to continue working across systems to transform the way that they deliver services to children, families, and the way services integrate with each other to continue working systemically, holistically with the practitioners, the professionals, etc. And then to continue delivering interventions for children at risk or children involved in criminality. And that's the broad vision, and we'll do that in different ways. And that's just not UK based; that's globally. So
Oh,
that's the.
lovely, fantastic. That's great. Um, okay, I have just a couple more points to make, but is there anything else that you think that I've not really covered or
I
asked you
just
about that
I
you want to
think
share?
well, just a little bit more, I think, about the organizational consultancy and training that we
Hmm.
deliver. So, we've been very blessed to consult to the Youth Justice Board of England and Wales, their CEO, senior leadership team, and senior leaders across England and Wales. Um, very, very blessed to work with a lot of national health trusts,
Hmm.
um, a lot of youth justice services and strategic management boards, and really helping them all to think about being culturally aware,
Hmm.
being culturally sensitive in the way they commission services, the way they structure and design services, and also the way practitioners deliver their work. We do a lot of consultancy to doctoral clinical students in year 1, 2, and 3, in addition to their supervisors and course leads and professors. And why do I do that work as an organization? I know how important CAMs are to children in the community. And if we don't have culturally sensitive practitioners, sometimes we miss out on intervening much earlier. And then they end up in custody doing really long
Long
stretches for
stretches,
serious.
yeah. Mm.
So the point I'm raising here is as an organizational consultant, um, it's really important that we are embedded in systemic change. And we do that through, as I said, NHS, local authorities, Um,
So in essence, on the front end, you're doing the sort of delivery with the
exactly,
kids. The back end, you're doing stuff around the organization to really try and drive home systemic change
change
and transformation. Yeah,
and transformation.
yeah,
Because
it
if
has
you
to be on, it has to be in tandem, doesn't it? That makes sense.
in tandem. You can
Mm.
spend all this time driving the change of behavior in children and young adults. And
And
if
the
you're not working,
context doesn't change.
context doesn't change because the
Mm.
practitioner is not becoming culturally sensitive, culturally aware, etc., etc. And we do a lot of work around it. We have a system that we call it a cultural awareness system, and it takes people through looking at disparities, the concept of adultification, the
Hmm.
adultification framework, looking at our social context assessment framework, which is something we've developed, which works in tandem with clinical formulations. It helps organizations to go much deeper into the
Yes.
historical context of families, and not really operate on the surface. So I just wanted to put that across, that as an
Yeah.
organizational
Yeah.
consultant, very much embedded in systemic change as well.
Thank you for that. Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Okay, so two more things really. I hear that you you recently won an award. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about that. You're the man. Well, tell us a bit about that
Wow.
one.
So first award and recognition for the work, which is incredible. But it was
Yeah.
an award ceremony which was started by Freddie, and I won't say his surname because I don't want to disrespect and get it wrong. But Freddie started the Power of a Woman Awards. He's a phenomenal film director, um, and actually, just while I'm talking to you, it's always important to acknowledge somebody's name properly. So give me a second and let me just get
Yeah,
Freddie's name up.
I always get it wrong, so I'm very sensitive to
Yeah,
that too. So yeah, get it
yeah.
right. Get it right.
So it's Freddie in Quaka.
And
Um,
Quaker. Okay.
yes, and God's willing, I'm saying it right. But Freddie created the Power of a Woman Awards, and then he created the Power of Men Awards, and
Hmm.
it's recognizing men and women of color who in various sectors and doing great things. And yeah, I won the award for just recognition to services to the community,
Hmm.
services in the mental health space, in the criminal justice space, and I'm sure as a musician as well for 30
Hmm.
plus years being in damage. So
Oh gosh, yes, yes,
really
yes.
lovely.
No, that's great. Um, and Andre, you really do, you sound as though you love your work. You love what you do.
I told you at the beginning, I'm a man of faith, so this is
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
calling.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
this
really
is
good.
something that you're similar to you, Dr. Sylvia. You're put on the earth to do something, and we're really fortunate that we've been able to find the thing or part of a
Hmm.
thing that we need
Hmm.
to do. So yeah, I love it. I love it. I
Yeah,
love
and I
it.
mean, sometimes I feel a bit wobbly about the level of impact, but I think first and foremost, the passion is so important.
Yes.
So kudos to you, definitely, and I
And I
agree.
had a clinical psychologist or a leader in clinical psychology message me the other day, and she said, I attended your training, and for the first time in my life as a clinician, you have helped me to understand my own cultural heritage. And she wasn't from a minoritized community, or should I
Okay.
say she was from a minoritized community, but um, won't go into too much. But she said, you've helped me to understand myself and my position in the system. You've helped me to go further back into my own history. And I now have a different lens as a clinician when working with patients. And when you talk about outcomes, that for me just, it's so reaffirming to hear that. And then
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
clinicians
good.
now go and deliver services to patients and service users with a whole different lens just based on our training. So
Yeah,
with the
yeah. At the very least, having some degree of curiosity and
yes,
not being a know-all, which I think
yes,
if they can get that right,
then we're
you're on the
good.
road. Yeah, you're on the
Yeah.
road. Okay, my dear, tell
Right.
us, how can our listeners follow your work?
Yes.
How can potential commissioners get in touch? What would they have to do? Leave us with that so we're very clear on that too.
So find me via LinkedIn, Andre Harriott, Andrez, surname Harriott, Harriott. Our website will be live in the new year. We have a holding page, so you can go to
Hmm.
www.tlguk.co.uk and
Hmm.
you can email the organization that way. But if not, find me on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and we can have a discussion around consultancy, training, or delivery of services for children and young adults in the community or custodial settings. There's so much that we have to offer. So yeah, get in touch and then let's have conversations. But in the new year, our website will really give an inside view as to who we are as an organization.
2025. Wow. Watch
20,
out.
yes.
Well, my dear, thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning and, all the very best and stay in touch.
Well, thank you for your time.